Hi guys, my name is Samantha Banks, and today I'm going to be talking to you guys about The Undercover Economist by Tim Harford. So the first question being asked is, how would you describe Ricardo's model and what are the limitations of this model? Personally, I would describe Ricardo's model as a comparative advantage, and it shows us that high rent has a cause and it's just not an arbitrary fact of life. His model is useful for discussing the relationship between scarcity and bargaining strength. It also illustrates the difference in agricultural productivity between meadows and marginal land, and the importance of agricultural productivity itself are the two things that determine rent on prime locations. So an example that could be taken from this is if somebody were to be commuting to work and they lived 1 or 2 hours away and they wanted to live closer to where they worked, it could be considered a prime location, and the realtor could probably get more money from them because it's just a better location for them. But the limitations of this model, it assumes rather than explains, and you can't properly explain it into detail just because it's based on an assumption. So the second question being asked is, what is the difference between first-degree price discrimination and second-degree price discrimination? So first-degree can also be called the unique target strategy, which is to evaluate a customer as an individual and charge according to how they're willing to pay it. It occurs when a business changes the price and how the units are consumed. So an example for this could be charging whites less money to go to the movies, but charging blacks more. A second-degree discrimination is known as the group target, which is to offer different members of distinct groups, and it occurs when companies change different prices for different quantities. So it could be offering a lower price for a movie for an elder person, or if you're going ice skating with your friends and your little brother gets in cheaper because he's younger. Anything like that. Next, I'm going to explain what is meant when Harford claims that you can't get more efficient than a perfectly competitive market. So this means that the right things are being made right, and the right quantities of it are going to the right people who value them the most. And this market has to perfectly follow the price system. The prices have to be true costs to the firm and true representation of the value of the product to the customers. You can't really get more efficient than a competitive market simply because every company is equal. He talks about this in the book a little bit. He says that there was actually a quote. He talked about how you can be looking in and you could be really suspicious about it, but once you look into their prices and everything like that, and you realize that you can join in and create your own company and start competing with them, then you get a little bit less judgmental about it. So Harford talks about a keyhole economics, and it's basically just a term that means targeting a specific problem through narrow solutions rather than just a broad idea. People kind of compare it to baby steps and piecing things together little by little instead of just conquering it all as a whole. Economics kind of targets the problem as closely as possible rather than attempting something more drastic. And some people also can relate it to keyhole surgery, which you operate and you don't really make a large incision, and it's not really invasive, and it minimizes the risks. What would a rational investment strategy look like? Rational investors should be able to second guess any predictable movements in the stock market. Sometimes they can't, but most of the times they can. The more rational the behavior of the stock market is and the more consistent it is, then it's easier to guess. But the more erratic behavior of the stock market, they could predict that too. Given what I've read so far, a rational investment strategy is to use a cost-benefit analysis in order to weigh the benefits versus the costs to see if your return on investment is worth the investment. An example would just be the stock markets, and knowing the risks and knowing whether you're going to gain or lose money you have to constantly be monitoring the stock market, and you just need to know your risks, and you need to know that everything can go wrong. So the next question asks, what is the traditional view of the origins of economic wealth? So the traditional view of the origins of economic wealth stemmed from natural resources or man-made resources, roads, machines, factories, human resources, education, and technological resources like high-tech machinery that was eventually put into the factories, computers and cell phones that we have now, anything like that. So question number 7 asks, how does a comparative advantage tell a country what to produce and or trade? The comparative advantage is when another country could produce more efficiently than another country, and they could produce higher than another country. And the Chinese, they produce goods for cheap prices, and America tried to prevent what they call dumping, which would be producing goods for cheap. We failed, but it ended up as competition and not dumping, and because of the competition, America's manufacturers benefit. So how is China doing better economically than India and Cameroon? China moved from a plan economy over to a market economy because they felt they needed more competition, and they're doing better economically because they took more time to change into that market system. The important thing about it was not who owned the companies, but that the companies were forced to compete in a relatively free market, which drove scarcity power, and they could tap into world markets for labor-intensive goods, and the currency these exports carried could be spent on raw materials and machinery that can help build their economy. New machines for their factories, anything would help them. They're doing better than Cameroon because they had substantially and rapidly growing domestic markets. And Cameroon wasted an opportunity a while back. It got on education and their education system. And the advantages they have over India is their process of economic engagement was more effective because of their connections with Hong Kong and Taiwan. So question 9 talks about Harvard and, according to him, what economics is all about. And economics to him is based off decision making, and it's about the producer more than it is the consumer. Economics is about people, and economic growth is about a better life for individuals. This can lead people to live with less fear and less hardship. And Harvard claims that things like sweatshops and other different forms of making money are better alternatives than starvation. So my overall opinion on the Undercover Economist, I learned a lot about bargaining strength and how it comes from scarcity, and how the strategies that companies actually use to make people pay more, why economic problems arise and how you can patch them up, and the economic decisions that people make that actually have effects on bystanders. I think this book is really informative, and I think it's eye-opening, in the examples that he uses you can almost see every day in your life. And as someone who's never taken an economics class and has never shown an interest in finances or anything like that, I've never even heard of half this stuff before I read this book, I think it really helped me kind of understand what's going on in the world around me. And I think like everybody should just read about this and know these things and be aware of them, because I really think that it can help you in the long run. So thank you for watching my vlog about the Undercover Economist by Tim Harford.